I'm Charlie Sykes. Turn up the heat. The temperatures are taking a dive. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, a merger deal between brewing giants, the owners of Anheuser-Busch and Miller. A first-of-its-kind jury verdict against Badger Guns for illegally selling a gun used to shoot 2 Milwaukee police officers. Scott Walker says if he runs for re-election, he'll commit to not running again for president. Speaking of which, his presidential campaign reports that it had burned through $6.4 million in just 71 days before he dropped out. The Packers go 5 for 5 and look to make it 6 in a row later today at Lambeau. President Obama extends the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan into the term of his successor. And the Democrats finally hold their first debate. But we start with this lingering question: what will Paul Ryan do? His Republican colleagues still want Paul Ryan to run for House Speaker, but some conservative activists have mounted a campaign suggesting that Ryan, one of Congress's leading conservatives, isn't conservative enough. By most measures, Ryan would be the most conservative speaker in recent history. Ryan has a 90% lifetime rating from the American Conservative Union, and for years he was a lonely voice pushing for spending cuts and entitlement reforms, and most conservatives enthusiastically backed his selection as Mitt Romney's vice presidential nominee, but he's also backed immigration and spending measures that some in his party object to. Some observers think the objections to Ryan say less about the Janesville congressman than they do about the shift in his own party. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, political strategist Linda Bruin, and former State Assembly Speaker Scott Jensen. We'll start with you, Scott Jensen. Your reaction to this buzz among some of the activists and the entertainers that Paul Ryan is insufficiently conservative to be Speaker?
You know, it's just really mind-blowing. I mean, one of Ronald Reagan's favorite phrases was, someone who agrees with me 80% of the time is not my enemy. But conservative activists have decided that Paul Ryan, who's got a 90% lifetime rating with the American Conservative Union, isn't conservative enough, and they made him their enemy, and they're going after him. Once, when I was Speaker and we were trying to add more and more seats to the legislature, and we were getting close to 60 seats, a Democrat pulled me aside and said, you know, you got to watch it, because if you get too many seats, it becomes ungovernable, and the furthest out members of your party are the ones who start to drive the train, and that's exactly what's happening.
Where are they driving the train? What
off
is
a cliff right now? That's exactly where they're headed. Politics is the art of compromise. Right now, we want Republicans to compromise between conservative members and very conservative members. The very conservative members don't want to compromise
well, obviously,
at all.
there's a lot of conservatives, a lot of people, out there in the conservative base who are tired of the compromise, who want a more contentious issue.
But they'll get nothing done.
Well, but they object, and they object to Paul Ryan's position on immigration reform. They object to his votes in favor of some of the bailouts. Are those legitimate objections?
Well, they might be legitimate policy objections, but they're not legitimate objections to someone being your leader. You're not going to find a leader wwho agrees with all 240-some members 100% of the time.
Okay. Linda Bruin.
You know, as a Democrat, it's really appalling for me to watch this, the gutting of one of the Republican Party's best and brightest. You know, I wouldn't vote for him because I'm a Democrat, but within the Republican Party, some of the terms that these media folks have used against him are really vicious. They've called him a collaborator. Talk about a loaded term. A saboteur, the worst pick for conservatives. I mean, it's almost as if they're talking about a completely different person. These folks, what would they do with Ronald Reagan? I mean, if Paul Ryan's too liberal, then so is Ronald Reagan.
I think that's actually a valid point, because if there is this standard of ideological purity, and I've been somebody that's known Paul Ryan for years, if he is not a conservative, sufficiently conservative, then certainly Ronald Reagan wouldn't be conservative. He is to the right of Newt Gingrich. So again, I'm not sure this says a lot more about Ryan than it does about how some of these activists have shifted into this really hardcore line. I understand their frustration, but will this be enough? And we're talking about some folks that maybe people aren't familiar with, the Eric and some of the national talk show hosts and some of the activists like Phyllis Schlafly. Do they have enough clout in Congress to actually derail this?
You know, you wonder, but at the same time, the people that were out there, just like you said, Erickson supported him for vice president, you know, Sean Hannity supported him for vice president, all of these people that are out there saying that he's not conservative enough, conservative enough. Now, you wonder what's going on, and you wonder why they are so persistent out there at beating on him, saying he's not pure enough, because there is no one in Congress right now that's pure enough to fit the bill of what they're looking for, which is very unfortunate, and I really think they're doing damage to the Republican Party.
I also wonder, a lot of these same folks that somehow are demanding the 100% purity from Paul Ryan are also backing and pushing Donald Trump, who wouldn't meet any standard of consistency. Your take on this, what does this look like from your point of view, Michael Holt?
It's kind of funny, really.
Yeah.
You know, one of his critics said he's going to put a pretty face on policy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was about him per se.
Yeah.
His looks, or is really about just, you know, putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
But, you know, from our perspective, you know, and I'm independent and she's Democrat and we're closer together, it looked like the Republican Party is imploding.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you can't even explain what a conservative is anymore. So what's a moderate? What's a conservative?
Well,
what's an ultra-conservative?
You know, his point, in terms of putting a pretty face, though, I think that one of the things that Paul Ryan brings to the table here is he would be one of the most effective communicators.
Absolutely.
And whatever you think about his ideology, he is one of the best and brightest members of Congress. He is a communicator. He's probably the best communicator of conservative ideas since Ronald Reagan. So we really have kind of a rump caucus that is arguing we don't want our best and brightest guy to be our leader.
No, that's exactly right. Don't put him in, coach. He's our best guy. That's essentially what some of these conservatives are saying. I don't think Paul Ryan should take the job for his own sake. I think that he is one of our best and brightest. He is a great communicator. He has a sunny, upbeat, smiling conservative vision that is inclusive. That's exactly what the party needs.
He also has a future ahead of him.
Yeah.
And if he ran for speaker, he wouldn't have a future.
You have been Speaker of the State Assembly. Should he take the job, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Your glass, is it half full or half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my glass is half full because the Republican-controlled legislature is pushing a bill that will allow people to register to vote online. My glass is half empty because that same bill will eliminate funding for special registration deputies.
Michelle Litchens.
My glass is half full because 149 people were rescued during a human trafficking sting this week, including over 50 people in Wisconsin. It's half empty because human trafficking is a real problem and thousands of victims still need to be rescued.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my glass is half full because UW-Madison hopes to privately raise more than $3 billion to fund student scholarships, attract top professors, and fund research. My glass is half empty because their efforts will certainly be rewarded by the Republican legislature pulling more public dollars from our flagship university.
Scott Jensen.
My glass is half empty as the media reports show that Governor Walker didn't get the presidential campaign he deserved. But my glass is half full because the governor's back home and leading Wisconsin forward again.
Well, my glass is half full because the state of Wisconsin finished the fiscal year with a $135 million surplus, and the state unemployment rate hit a 14-year low. It's half empty because most of you just heard about that for the first time, didn't you? Because the mainstream media around here did not think it was big news. Coming up on Sunday Insight, recent shootings on college campuses sparking a fight over gun rights in Madison. We'll take a look at dueling proposals from Democrats and Republicans. A war over gun bans. There are two competing proposals in Madison right now. One Republican proposal would allow concealed carry permit holders to carry weapons on university campuses. Now, right now, guns are allowed on campus, but not inside college buildings. Meanwhile, a Democrat proposal would ban all weapons from any place on campus and would make carrying a weapon a felony. The proposals come in the wake of high-profile, deadly campus shootings that have helped revive the debate over gun rights. So, your take on this, Linda Bruin. Should faculty and students who have concealed carry permits be allowed to bring them into university buildings or not?
You know, I'm not an expert on this, and so I tend to look at what the police say about this. And while the university regents have issued kind of a bland, take it anyway statement, the UW police have issued a very strong statement saying that doing this or enacting this bill would create a major security issue. And they referenced Camp Randall Stadium being filled with 80,000 people and concealed carry. So given that's their concern, and that's been the concern of police in many areas across the country, I would support the current status quo.
But how does it make a campus, just from a logical point, how does it make a campus safer to put up signs saying weapon-free zone? Because the nut jobs that come in and do the mass shootings, they're not going to be dissuaded by that. So all those signs do is basically say, reassure them, this is the ultimate soft target. Nobody here is armed. Nobody's going to engage in self-defense.
See, and that's the part of it that's hard for me, because there is logic to that. I think from the police perspective, just the sheer numbers of guns potentially increasing causes more potential violent episodes.
Okay, so, you buying that?
No, not at all. I mean, the fact is, it's facts, right? In Israel, they had a school massacre. They decided to put an armed guard in every single school in Israel, and they haven't had an issue there since 1974. We know from these people who've gone in through these mass shootings, they have journaled that they would have taken out schools or different places, but they knew that there were armed people in Utah, for instance. Or the guy that went to shoot up a movie theater didn't stop at other theaters because it wasn't posted. So we know that when you're able to defend yourself, that it's a safer area for everyone.
But the reality is most 18-year-olds don't know how to defend themselves, don't know how to operate a gun.
True.
You know, it's very easy.
Which is why they wouldn't have a concealed carry permit.
I have concealed carry, but I'm a Vietnam vet. And it's totally different. In the Israel situation that you're talking about, that's security guards. That's not students walking around with guns.
Okay, let's say that you were teaching a course or you were taking a course. Should you be allowed to carry that weapon into the building?
Now that one I have to.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
No, we're talking about students.
Well, you could be a student or you could be a faculty.
But the bill doesn't discriminate or make that fine line in the sand. This would make Wisconsin the second state in the country, only after Utah, to have this expansive of a ban. And I just wonder, do we always have to go this extreme in Wisconsin on these types of issues?
Okay, well, what do you think?
Well, these gun-free zones have been a target for these mass shootings. We have to do one of two things. You either have to increase security around the inside the gun-free zones, or allow people to defend themselves, or some answer in between where certain individuals on campus are allowed to carry weapons so that they can help defend students if something arises.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some common sense response to this. You obviously do not want drunken frat boys, you know, with 18-year-old drunken frat boys carrying guns. I get that. You don't want necessarily a lot of people who are drinking beer at Camp Randall Stadium. But on the other hand, you know, if you have responsible gun owners, if you have, I don't know, ex-military, and we have a lot of returning veterans who would be responsible, you know, what is it about them that we don't trust? Now, I understand almost the aesthetic argument, we don't want a lot of guns, but the problem isn't the guns. And I understand why people have that emotional reaction. The problem is the willingness of people to break the law. And by having that sign up, basically saying it's a weapon-free zone, you don't dissuade anyone that wants to kill people from going in there. Now, this is another reason why, though, I do think that the supporters of concealed carry ought to embrace, you know, rigorous training and background checks so that people will have confidence that the people with the guns know what they're doing with the guns. And I think that actually helps and enhances gun rights. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we'll tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, first he makes dumb comments about slavery. Now Ben Carson is making asinine comments about the Jewish Holocaust. To Uncle Ben, please shut up. Quit embarrassing our race.
That's so racist. Michelle Litchens.
To the North Shore Library, allow people to drink water while they're working. This kind of press is not the upgrade of your image you're looking for.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my advice is to CNBC, who's hosting the next Republican presidential debate. Don't give in to Donald Trump and Ben Carson's threats to pull out of the debate if CNBC doesn't agree to their demands. Even if they have a point, giving in to candidate threats is a bad idea.
They already caved.
I know.
Scott Jensen.
I know.
My advice is for Bernie Sanders. If you're really going to spend the next couple of debates talking about who is going to give away the most free stuff, go all in. Get a white beard and a red suit.
Well, my unsolicited advice along the same line is to my Democrat friends. It's sincere. Please nominate Bernie Sanders, because what America really, really wants is a self-proclaimed socialist who looks like that angry old guy Muppet. That sounded sincere, right? Did you? Yeah. Still ahead on Sunday Insight. Once friends, now foes. Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele faces some competition if he wants to keep his job. We'll size up next year's race. A fight on the left in Milwaukee County. Two liberal Democrats get set to face off in next spring's election for Milwaukee County Executive. State Senator Chris Larson announced last week that he would challenge incumbent Chris Abele, criticizing him for working with legislative Republicans and for his role in a plan to help fix failing schools in Milwaukee. Larson is backed by Congresswoman Gwen Moore, and his candidacy sets up an interesting battle between two quite liberal Democrats. So, Michael Holt, who has the edge here?
The county exec.
Yeah?
He has money. And then, you know, I've been
Yeah, but Larson's
with,
got Gwen Moore. She carries some weight in the central city, doesn't she?
Well, I've been flooded with emails from black activists who are saying no to Chris Larson. They think he's a manipulator. His so-called definition as being progressive means he gets rid of, you know, the good progressive black state representatives as he's done in the past. He's pulling the strings of black elected officials right now. Nobody in the central city really likes him. Gwen can't get over that hump. I think Abele's money will win out in the long run.
You see, we spent all this time talking about Republicans fighting with one another. I'm enjoying this. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I do think Chris Larson is a liberal Democrat, but I think Chris Abele is not a liberal Democrat. I consider him a moderate Democrat. Obviously, Abele's got, if you look at their last finance reports, Abele's got 5 times the money in the bank, plus he's got his own money. So the money hurdle alone is bad.
Grassroots liberal activists, the unionistas, they seem to be coalescing around Larson.
But Abele also has a lot more name recognition.
Right.
This, you know, not all of the county is liberal. So, you know, right now, Larson's got a huge mountain to climb. On the other hand, he does have an issue, which is the takeover of the schools.
Well, okay, how big an issue is that?
Yeah, he's acquiesced to the teachers union. Did you read his commentary in the Journal Sentinel? He said the problem with the students are the students. You know, he completely said, let's throw everything back in the laps of the teachers.
So Larson does have that base.
Are conservative businessmen in Milwaukee County, though, going to coalesce around Chris Abele, even though Chris Abele is, I mean, the guy is a liberal Democrat?
Yeah, but he's the best that they've got. I mean, this is the interesting thing here in that you have 2 East Side liberals, and Abele has essentially abandoned his old East Side liberal base. He now has David Clark's base. He's going to be the strong candidate in the suburbs. And the question, I think, the swing voters in this race are going to be African-American voters. I don't think Gwen Moore is going to be able to convince them that Chris Larson has their interests at heart.
I think it's fascinating, by the way, watching the county board, they have to figure out who do they hate more? Do they hate Chris Abele more, or do they hate Sheriff Clark more? And they've decided they hate Abele more than they hate Sheriff Clark. He's going to be a wild card in this. Okay, what is it you don't get? What's going on the table? What don't you get this week, Michael Holt?
Well, they say Lamar Odom has a 50-50 chance of surviving a drug and Viagra binge. What I don't get is why a handsome, rich, ex-basketball player has to go to a whole house anyway.
Michelle Litchens.
Charlie, what I don't get is why my health insurance premiums are going up another 33% this year when Obamacare promised my health insurance premiums would go down.
Linda Bruin.
It's been 3 weeks since John Boehner announced his retirement as Speaker of the House, but Republicans still can't find someone they want to replace him who's willing to take the job. When you can't fill one of the most powerful jobs in the political jobs in the country, Republican claims that they'd run the country better than Democrats becomes a joke.
Scott Jensen.
Charlie, what I don't get is why some conservatives are saying the Republicans in Madison haven't done enough. So far this year, tax cuts, school choice, right to work, prevailing wage, defunding Planned Parenthood, 20-week abortion ban, and civil service reform.
So they should take a nap now? Or what? So what I don't get is how Scott Walker's presidential campaign manager, Rick Wiley, managed to blow through more than $6 million in just 70 days. Oh, wait, I do. He paid himself and his cronies exorbitant salaries. What I really don't get is why anyone else would ever want to hire the guy. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. First, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, losers, every man taller than me. Winner, short people. A new study shows short men are more considerate, make better companions, and are better lovers. Just confirming what I already knew.
Michelle Litchens, you are better, aren't you?
My winner is actress Jennifer Lawrence. When she learned that her male co-stars were paid more than she was, instead of playing the discrimination card, she said she was disappointed in herself for not being a more aggressive negotiator. The loser this week is Bernie Sanders for saying he was tired of hearing about Hillary Clinton's emails in the debate. He's a double loser if he thinks he'll win the Democrat primary because of his cheery personality and socialist agenda.
Linda Bruin.
Well, Hillary Clinton is my winner for her phenomenal performance during last week's Democratic debate. Her knowledge base, poise, and solid proposals prove once again why this woman is qualified to be President of the United States. My losers are the people who ran Scott Walker's presidential campaign. The campaign raised more than $7.4 million, but Walker Walker had one of the shortest presidential campaigns in history, due in part to his own mistakes, but also due to his campaign hiring 90 staff and paying top advisors over $200,000 a year. Not a good showing for a politician whose entire political career has been based on his claim of fiscal conservatism.
Scott Jensen.
My winner of the week is Wisconsin's economy, where unemployment in September was the lowest in 14 years and the state budget has yet another surplus. My loser is Kevin Kennedy and the GAB. Tick-tock. The final countdown has begun for this out-of-control state agency.
Well, my winner is State Senator Alberta Darling, who was honored with this year's Margaret Thatcher Award for her courage, perseverance, and her leadership. It was well-deserved. Loser, the war in Afghanistan. It turns out that we are losing the war that we never tried to win. So the endless war just goes on, even under our Nobel Peace Prize winning president. Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.